You are listening to the FORSCOM Frontline, bringing you to our soldiers on the front lines of readiness.
Hey everyone, and welcome to FORSCOM Frontline. I'm Jeannie, and I'm your host today. Today, I am joined by Master Sgt. Edmond Adams, the Military Working Dog Program Manager for FORSCOM. Welcome, Master Sgt. Adams, and thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Thank you, Jenny. It's an honor to be on your podcast. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So to start, because I know everybody heard military working dogs, so they're probably excited to hear this episode. But we're going to start off and just tell me a little bit about yourself, how long you've been in the Army, where you were originally from, that kind of thing, just so we can get to know you a little bit.
All right, so I'm originally from Marshall, North Carolina, a real small town, western North Carolina, a little one red light town. I've been in the Army for 17 years.
Okay.
Initially enlisted as a 31 Bravo military police,
Okay.
and then later on got the opportunity to be a dog handler, and then we switched MOSs to 31 Kilo. Hobbies: hiking, hunting, fishing, anything outdoors.
All the Western North Carolina stuff.
Absolutely.
I'm from North Carolina as well. So
What part?
I was actually born on Fort Bragg and
Okay.
grew up in Sanford. So
Okay.
I'm a Carolina girl.
Nice.
Yeah.
Been married to my loving and supporting wife, Tony, for 16 years. No kids. Do have 3 dogs, though, so that takes up quite a bit of my time.
Of course you do.
So,
Of course you have dogs. So, okay, fantastic. Now, you mentioned you came into the Army as a military police and then later became a dog handler.
Correct.
Now, what was that transition like, and why did you go MP to dog handler? Is there like a special thing you need to do that, or?
So when I originally became a dog handler, I went through the military working dog handlers course in 2009. So at that point, we hadn't become an MOS yet. We was 31 Bravo military police, and you had to have an ASI. It was just ASI at that time, meaning it was just a section off of 31 Bravos.
Okay. So for those who don't know, an ASI is a skill identifier saying that you can be a dog handler. Now, were there a lot of dog handlers at the time that you became one? How did you get that ASI?
So when I originally joined the Army, I didn't even know that we had military working dogs. So I got to my first duty station, which was Schofield Barracks, Hawaii.
Lucky you.
Yeah, it's nice. Big change from Western North Carolina.
Absolutely.
So got to Schofield, got to work around other soldiers, and I started seeing, some MPs on the road with canines. So I got to asking questions. I'm really intrigued. Got to asking questions, figure out, kind of what the military working dogs did. And two, a big thing for me that I wanted to be a dog handler is, at that time, with the stuff going on in Iraq and Afghanistan with the IED threats, explosives, and I heard the stories about the dogs are trained to find IEDs.
Okay.
So that's one thing. Is like, well, if I can do something else, I'd like to take part and to try to mitigate the risk of soldiers in deployed environments from the IED threat.
Okay.
So it was like a big push for me. Like I wanted to go to canine school.
Okay. And so what were the steps back then? And we'll talk about this in a minute, like how it's now an actual MOS. But before then, to actually do it, what did you have to do to become a canine handler?
So at that time, they wanted you to be at least a specialist. And I went through like a 2-week tryout at Schofield at the military working dog kennels there, and they wanted you to have at least 2 years left on the island. So I went through tryouts, made it through that, got a school date, and went to the handler's course.
Nice. And you've been a handler ever since?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So, and that kind of leads me into, the history of the MOS, because before it was an ASI, a skill identifier that you had to have on being an MP. And then later, what year, because you were talking 2009, so what year did canine handler become an actual MOS?
An actual MOS effective was October 2014.
Okay. So now anybody, say, just a new recruit off the street walks into a recruiting station, they can go in and say, I want to be a 31 Kilo. Is
Yes,
that
they
how
can.
that works?
As long as there's
Okay.
slots open, yes.
And now, because you went through trials and then went through school and whatnot at Schofield, what are the steps now for a 31 kilo coming straight into the Army?
So straight in, to be a 31 kilo, they have to go to Fort Leonard Wood, or not Fort Leonard, excuse me. They have to go through basic combat training first.
Okay.
Then upon graduation, they'll go to Fort Leonard Wood for like MP school, their AIT.
Okay.
So, but AIT for 31 kilos is two parts. So they'll go through the portion at Fort Leonard Wood, and then after that, after they graduate that, they'll go to Lackland Air Force Base and attend the military working dog handlers course, which is 11 weeks. And then after that, they're actual 31 kilo, and then they'll get assigned out to the field.
Okay.
Go to their installation, wherever they're assigned.
And now we have canine handlers on every Army installation, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so you could get stationed at any Army installation as a 31 kilo as long as there's a slot available, just like any other MOS.
Yes.
Okay. All right. That sounds like fun. And so how long were you a canine handler? Because right now you're in a position where you don't have your own dog. But how long did you do that before you came into this position?
Okay, so kind of the way the MOS works, once you assume the position of like they call it plans NCO, which is your operations sergeant, or a kennel master, you're no longer by MTO, you're not assigned a military working dog at that point. At that point, you manage the organization, train the soldiers, stuff like that.
Okay. So, and now that's what you do as the FORSCOM program manager, right?
So the program manager still it's a little different than being a kennel master. So
Okay.
So what I do now is more or less manage and source like deployments that come down from from Big Army for military working dogs. Any kind of like United States Secret Service taskings, budget. I run the military working dog certifications to evaluate the dog teams, and then I conduct annual inspections of the installations or the military working dog kennels just to make sure that they're meeting requirements in accordance to regulation.
Okay. Now, do you still get to work with any of the military working dogs, or is your position now just kind of overseeing everyone in FORSCOM?
Kind of just overseeing.
Oh, I bet you miss your dog, don't you?
Absolutely.
How many dogs did you have in your career?
So I worked 5 dogs.
5 dogs. I'm not going to ask you your favorite because that's like trying to say which is your favorite child, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, all of them was my favorite. So.
Aw. Now, are there certain breeds that a dog has to be a military working dog?
So for the Army, right now we use German Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, and Dutch Shepherds.
Okay. And what did you have? What were your 5 dogs?
So mine, I had German Shepherd and Belgian Malinois.
Okay. All right.
Never got an opportunity to work a Dutch Shepherd, but they're amazing animals.
Okay. Sounds good. And so I know you said your job is different now than when you were a dog handler. What would you say the biggest difference is? I mean, obviously you don't have a dog, but what's the difference in being in a line unit and being in operations?
So biggest difference now is say when the Army pushes down on like requirements or taskings for the military working dogs, I manage them, I source them out to the installations, and then the soldiers that's in the unit, they make sure that the dogs and the soldiers are trained to meet those requirements. So it's more or less, operations come in, I assign them to the kennels, and they make sure that the soldiers and dogs are performed to meet that requirement.
Okay. And you did mention a couple of events that a dog would be involved in. Can you tell us a little bit about the different things across FORSCOM that our military working dogs are doing?
Yeah. So dogs, they're utilized a lot for law enforcement. You'll see them working law enforcement on the installations. You'll see them at the gates conducting random anti-terrorism measures. Secret Service is a big one. We support, POTUS, VPOTUS, FLOTUS, former president. We support a lot of events going on right now, and then of course deployments.
Okay. And how is a deployment on a military working dog? Like, does it affect their stress, or is that something that they're trained to do? Because I know there are long flights to some of the locations that we have troops. Does that affect them in any way like it does?
It does.
A human being?
Yeah, it does. Typically, a lot of it depends on what area they're going to, going to go work in, what operations they're going to be doing. But too, you look at it, just from experience of, deploying with a couple dogs is, some of them seem to enjoy it a little more because the way the dogs are now, they sleep at the kennels at night, because we can't take the dogs home.
Okay.
But usually on deployment, the dogs are typically usually sleeping in your room, unless you have a kennels wherever you're deployed at. They sleep, with the handler. So you look at like the rapport that you get with that dog on deployment, like you just can't get it in garrison.
Gotcha.
Because you're with that dog 24/7, sleeping with the dog, like it's awesome.
Now, how does that work with being in a line unit and having your own dog? And obviously the military PCSs. So do you get to keep your dog like as long as they're alive, or until they're retired, or do they get passed on to another handler if you have to leave? How does that work?
So for that, that's up to the commanders of those units. So
Okay.
dogs typically are assigned to the installation. So usually when a handler PCSs, they stay at the installation. A new handler comes in and picks up the dog. But also too, commanders do have the flexibility. If they want to PCS that dog with that handler, that's totally on the unit.
Oh, wow. So do they actually like put the dogs on orders to PCS
They do.
with their handler?
Yeah, the dogs will be on the orders.
Okay. And does that happen often, or?
Sometimes it does. I've seen it quite a few times.
Okay.
Then it just depends on what the commanders want to do.
Situation.
The
Gotcha.
situation.
And how long does a dog serve as a canine in the military?
Good question. So for the dogs, a lot of times it's dog dependent. So because some dogs will get an injury or have health issues, at different times. But normally it's about 8 to 11 years old. That's how long you'll see them work. And then once they come up for adoption, the great thing about the military working dog program is once they come up, they're ready for adoption, and they're like, hey, the dog's ready for, to be, we call them disposition.
Yeah.
The handlers get the first pick to adopt that dog.
Oh.
So like if you look through all the dogs, they have like a service record. So any handler that works that dog will sign like dates that they work the dog. And yeah, they get an opportunity to adopt.
Okay. Do they do, because I've heard the term that they retire them at their time. Do they get like a ceremony or anything when they retire before they're put up for adoption?
Depends on the unit. So
Okay.
I know for a lot of the dogs, like when I was a kennel master, a lot of the dogs that we retired would give them a full ceremony.
I love
You'd have the
that.
dogs up front with their handlers. Yeah, they'd have a full ceremony.
Now, what would be in a full ceremony? Do they get like an award, a certificate, or?
They'd get an award.
Okay.
We'd send the dogs up for awards for the the time that they served. Like I said, they'd sit up there with their handlers, and at the end, dog get treats.
Treats. Now, what kind of awards do they get? Is it like dog treats, or do they actually get medals, or? How does that work?
So what I did in the kennels, I actually got an award, like an actual Army award.
So like an
Army
Army
Achievement
Achievement
Award.
Medal. Okay. All right. So do they get like, is it a special one for them? Because I know like for the Army, it's all the like little clip-on ones and the little bars that go on your uniform. So do they do something special for the canines, or is it the same and they like clip
Same
it
thing.
on their
They
collar?
clip it on their collar, or just give them the plaque.
Okay. Now who gets to keep that? Like, does it go to the handler? Does it go to the unit? Does it, when the dog, obviously they're retired, does that award stay with them when when they get adopted? Does the new owner get the award for them?
Typically,
or?
they'll go to the last handler, or you'll
Okay.
see some units you walk in, they'll have like a shadow box of all the former dogs that served in the unit. They'll have their awards in there.
Okay.
all that stuff.
So
Pictures.
it's just really dependent on the installation and
Dependent.
the unit. Okay, so everybody does something a little bit different. Okay. So I want to know, how many working dogs do we have in FORSCOM?
So if we're at strength, it's going to be a little over 200 dogs.
Oh, wow.
That's at full strength.
Okay. So 200.
Lots of dogs in FORSCOM.
Okay. Now, this is something I have always been super curious about. Where do the dogs come from? Like, how are they trained? How are they certified to be an actual canine? You know, that I know there has to be some kind of process to make them ready to be, like, what does that look like?
So a lot of our dogs are procured out of Europe. They're procured out of Europe. They're sent to Lackland Air Force Base. At that point, that's where they receive like their basic training for the dogs before they're sent to the field. So you have that, like the dogs that are procured out of Europe, and then there's also a breeding program at Lackland called the puppy program. So
the puppy program, that's so cute.
So, cool fact though about the puppy program is the way that you recognize, like if any of the dogs went through the puppy dog breeding program, the first two letters of their name is the same. So like say if you have a dog named, there's one right now called Arkansas, right? Dog's name, but the first two letters are AA, then, Arkansas. So it's a cool fact about the dogs, that's where the dogs are typically either the breeding program or procured out of Europe. Then, like I said, they go to Lackland and go through their basic training. Then they have to be evaluated there. They have to, they have a evaluation they go through at Lackland, and if they pass that, then they're sent out to the field. Then once we receive the dogs to the field, then they'll be assigned a handler. They have to go through like training, and they had to meet the Headquarters Department of the Army certification standards.
Okay.
Then once they pass that, then that's when they go out and they start actually being utilized, whether it be law enforcement, whatever mission that they need to do.
Okay. So how long does it take from start to finish before, they enter the program, whether it's, you get them from Europe or even the puppy program? At what age can they start the process of becoming a military working dog, and then how long does it take until they're fully released into a unit?
So usually you'll see the dogs in the field at about 18 months to 2 years old, usually. Then again, it's dog dependent how fast they learn, pick up the training. And then once they arrive to the unit, then it's all on that unit, like to train the dog, get them through certification standards, and that can be anywhere from, I've seen 2 months, and I've seen, it take up to 6 months once they get to the unit for the dog to certify.
Now, is it possible for the dog to basically flunk out and not become certified as a canine?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's and two, when we was talking about adoptions, down at Lackland, there is dogs that get down there and they just can't pass they can't pass the standards to be pushed out to the field, and you can put in an application and request to adopt one of those dogs.
Oh wow! So you have to actually request to adopt them. They
don't
don't do like a public adoption, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, you have to go on their website and put in an application.
Okay. Is there a high demand for the military working dog dropouts?
I wouldn't say a high demand, but there's some that doesn't make it.
Okay. So, all right. Sounds good. So we live in a technology-based world, and we have all these new high-tech things that we can do. So why do we still use dogs? So
when it comes to technology, machines, stuff like that, we just can't replicate, an animal that breathes, it learns, it's adapting to the environment. And two, I actually brought something, a quote from now General Retired Petraeus that he said, the capability that military working dogs bring to the fight can't be replicated by man or machine. By all measures of performance, their yield outperforms any asset we have in our inventory. Our Army would be remiss if we failed to invest more in these incredibly valuable resources.
Wow. It's really powerful.
And actually, that quote from General Petraeus is what actually kind of started for our own MOS. once they seen the capability that these dogs was bringing to the fight, when it comes to being, enablers and combat multipliers. Once they seen what the dogs was doing, they're like, oh, because the way it was structured at that time, there kind of was no structure, just an ASI. So he's like, oh, we probably should make this an MOS and put more investment into the military working dog program.
Wow. And now here we are 10 years later as an actual MOS. And how many handlers across FORSCOM do we have?
Handlers across FORSCOM, there's over 200 handlers.
Over 200. So it's kind of like a one-on-one ratio with the dogs.
Yeah, so
Okay.
When you hear of like a military working dog team, that consists of one handler, one dog.
Okay. So, and then what is it? So if I were to walk over to the K9 unit here on Fort Liberty, how many people are in that MP unit for the K9 MP unit? Like, what does that consist of?
Yeah, so your kennels it'll be set up you'll have a kennel master, you'll have an operations NCO, and then you'll have your patrol explosive detector dog handlers, your patrol drug detector dog handlers, and your patrol explosive detector dog enhanced handlers.
Okay, so we have a whole team of K9s working in the background to keep us protected.
Absolutely.
Okay, fantastic. So what is next for you? Like, where do you go? Like, because you've had a whole career of working with K9s, and now you're the FORSCOM program manager. You have 17 years in. I'm assuming you're going to go to 20 and retire. So what happens after you leave FORSCOM? What's the next step for you?
So for our MOS, we have a sergeant major position at proponency at Fort Leonard Wood.
Okay.
And then there's a position, you have the Department of the Army Military Working Dog Program Manager.
Okay. So is that what are you shooting for, sergeant major, to move into one of those spots and go longer than 20?
We'll see.
We'll see
how it goes.
Okay. So you'll probably never get to go back and work with a dog one-on-one, right?
Unfortunately, no.
So sad. And you sent me a picture of you and one of your dogs, which we're going to use you guys will see it on YouTube for the post of you and your dog, Max. Now, why did you choose a picture of Max? I asked you earlier if you had a favorite, so I'm not going to say he's your favorite, but I'm curious why you chose a photo of you and Max.
So when I got assigned Max, at that time I was stationed in Camp Darby, Italy.
Oh, I love Italy.
I stationed there, and I was Max's first handler. You know, he got shipped over from Lackland Air Force Base. He was real young when we got him. He was actually like 14 months old when he got to the kennels.
Okay.
Trained him up, took him to certification, and then right after cert, got a call from my kennel master at the time. It was like, hey, we got a deployment to Afghanistan coming up, and you've been selected, you and Max, and so me and Max went. Deployed to Afghanistan, had a pretty good deployment. Max definitely done his job. Couldn't ask for better out of that military working dog. I had a lot of memories of that dog.
Good. Oh, that makes me so happy. So we've talked a lot about the MOS and the dogs and whatnot, and I can't think of anything else to ask. So is there anything else you would like to share about the program as a whole that you think our audience would be appreciative of?
Yeah, so when it comes to a military working dog handler, like working with these dogs every day, training them, you're talking about a rewarding job. Like you go out and yes, it's hard work. You're training an animal that, it's something that doesn't talk back. You're trying to figure out, what makes that dog click. Because the good thing about the training that we do with these dogs, like when a dog has a certain training deficiency, or you're trying to train the dog to do a certain task, there's no manual you can pick up or anything that says how to get a dog from point A to point B. That's when you get with all the other dog trainers, the dog handlers, and you come together, you brainstorm it, and you figure out a training plan for that dog to get them from point A to B, C, wherever you want to go. And that's one of the reasons why I absolutely loved being a dog handler, because there's just there's no 2 days the same. Every time you pick the dog up, or take the dog out of the kennel facility to go train for the day, you're always pushing the dogs to do better. They're always trying to train a new task.
Okay.
It's just amazing.
So, and that's fascinating to me. So, and actually did have one last question before we finish up. What do you think a person needs, like, in themselves to become a dog handler? Because, like, we talked about it earlier, walking into a recruiting station, I'm an 18-year-old kid and I walk in and say, I want to be a dog handler. What do you think that person needs in their personality? Do they need to like dogs? Do they have a passion? What kind of, oomph do you need to be a dog handler?
So one, of course, would be liking dogs. Two,
that's the number one, right? You should probably love them, right?
And then patience. Patience, be adaptable. Because it is, it is quite a bit to be a dog handler. Because you look at, once you come in, you go to, of course, basic combat training. Then you go to AIT phase 1 and 2. Go through the course, and once you get out, you're expected to learn how to train dogs. Be a dog handler, learn all the law enforcement aspects of the MOS, and then how to, just soldier, shoot, move, and communicate. So there's a lot to it.
So it's not an easy job.
Not an easy job, but very rewarding.
Awesome. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. Like,
Thank you.
I've learned a lot about military working dogs, and I can absolutely see your passion when you talk about them. So I appreciate you talking with us today. And then I was on the Military Working Dogs website and found this little quote that I'm going to end this podcast with. They may not have actual boots on the ground, but you'll find U.S. military working dogs serving wherever American troops do. They are as lovable as they are loyal, but make no mistake, these are highly skilled warriors trained by the best to serve alongside them. And with that, we'll see you next time on the front line.
Thank you.